Knull. Knull first appeared in Venom Volume 4, Issue 3 in 2018. He is introduced as the god of symbiotes and predates the universe itself. His backstory reveals that he was born from the darkness that existed before the universe. When the Celestials began creating the universe, Knull was awakened and enraged by the disruption of his dark realm. In his anger, he created the first symbiote from his shadow, All Black the Necrosword, and used it to decapitate a Celestial. This act of violence against the Celestials marked him as a significant cosmic force of darkness and chaos. And following his initial clash with the Celestials, Knull went on to create an army of symbiotes, which he used to wage war against the light and life of the newly formed universe. His connection to the symbiotes is profound, as he controls them through a hive mind connection, influencing their actions and desires. His influence and mythology were further explored in the Absolute Carnage and King in Black story arcs, where his full assault on Earth presents a dire threat to the Marvel heroes. In these arcs, Knull's arrival on Earth is marked by a cataclysmic darkness and the unleashing of numerous symbiote creatures under his control. His powers include not only the creation and manipulation of symbiotes, but also control over darkness, immense physical strength, and near immortality. Knull presents a fundamental cosmic horror in the Marvel Universe, embodying the existential dread of the unknown and the abyss. He made his live-action debut in Venom: The Last Dance, but the Sony Spider-Man universe is dead, so his story won't go anywhere, maybe. Dark Phoenix. She's not just one of Marvel's most iconic evil variants, she is one of the most dangerous and devastating forces in the entire Marvel universe. Dark Phoenix is the corrupted form of Jean Grey, a founding member of the X-Men, after she becomes fully consumed by the immense power of the Phoenix Force. Introduced during the legendary Dark Phoenix saga in 1980, this storyline forever changed the X-Men and established Dark Phoenix as the ultimate symbol of power without control. The Phoenix Force is a cosmic entity representing life, death, and rebirth. When Jean Grey sacrificed herself during a space mission to save her teammates, the Phoenix Force resurrected her, bonding with her and enhancing her powers beyond imagination. As Phoenix, Jean became one of the most powerful beings in existence, able to manipulate matter at an atomic level, resurrect the dead, and tap into limitless cosmic energy. For a time she used this power as a force for good, helping the X-Men protect the Earth. But such incredible power comes with a price. Jean's transformation into Dark Phoenix happened when her emotions spiraled out of control, and the Phoenix Force, feeding on her human desires, unleashed her most destructive instincts. Corrupted by lust for power, freedom, and experience, Jean became something far beyond human, a being driven by pure cosmic hunger. No longer content with saving the world, Dark Phoenix set her sights on dominating the universe, consuming a star and wiping out an entire populated solar system in the process. With that one act, she instantly became a threat not just to Earth, but to all of existence. What makes Dark Phoenix so terrifying is that she is still Jean Grey at her core. The heart and soul of one of the X-Men's most beloved members are buried within this unstoppable force of destruction. The X-Men, especially Cyclops, were forced to watch the woman they loved turn into a monster, knowing that stopping her might mean killing her. Dark Phoenix's powers are virtually limitless, but it's not just her strength that makes her dangerous. It's the lack of any human restraint. She doesn't think like a person anymore. She acts like a cosmic force, following her hunger and desire for experience, regardless of the consequences for the universe. But her story ends in tragedy. Realizing the danger she posed to everyone she cared about, Jean fought to regain control long enough to sacrifice herself, ending her own life to prevent Dark Phoenix from consuming the cosmos. And to this day, Dark Phoenix stands as one of Marvel's most powerful and heartbreaking evil variants. She's a symbol of what happens when the burden of limitless power becomes too much for even the strongest mind to bear. Dormammu. He's a central antagonist in Marvel Comics, first appearing in Strange Tales 1-6 in 1964. He is a powerful, mystical entity and the ruler of the Dark Dimension, and he is one of the most powerful foes of Doctor Strange and a recurring threat to the Marvel multiverse. Dormammu is an interdimensional being of immense mystical power, possessing abilities that include energy projection, matter manipulation, immortality, and vast sorcery that rivals or surpasses that of any magic user in the Marvel universe. His powers are further augmented by the energies of the Dark Dimension, over which he has absolute control, allowing him to reshape its reality and command its denizens. Unlike many other magical characters whose powers derive from spells or external sources, Dormammu's powers are innate and make him a conduit of magical energy. Central to Dormammu's character is his ambition to expand his rule beyond the Dark Dimension. He aims to conquer other dimensions, including Earth, bringing them under his tyrannical control. And this ambition sets him on a collision course with Earth's Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. And over the decades, Dormammu and Doctor Strange have had numerous encounters, with Dormammu often attempting to invade Earth or expand his influence, only to be thwarted by Strange and his allies. And his influence extends beyond direct combat, as he often deals with other cosmic and mystical entities, manipulating lesser beings to do his bidding and forming alliances that serve his conquest goals, reflective of his overarching desire for dominance and control. Visually, Dormammu is depicted with a flaming head, and this iconic look underscores his status as a being of pure magical energy, devoid of a physical body as humans understand it. His presence in Marvel's stories is often a sign of high stakes and cosmic level threats, emphasizing the scale and seriousness of the challenges he poses. Magneto. He is easily one of Marvel's most iconic and complex villains, but more than anything, he is one of the most tragic figures in comic book history. He first appeared in X-Men 1 in 1963 as the primary antagonist of the X-Men. At first glance, Magneto might seem like just another power-hungry supervillain, bent on domination. But when you understand his past, you realize that Magneto is less a villain and more a man broken by the cruelty of the world, doing what he believes is necessary to protect his people, no matter the cost. Magneto's real name is Mac Eisenhart, though he is more commonly known by his alias, Eric Lanzire. His tragic story begins during World War II, when as a child he witnessed the absolute worst of humanity. Magneto is a Holocaust survivor, having been imprisoned in Auschwitz concentration camp, where he saw his family murdered and was forced to live through unimaginable horrors. These experiences shaped his worldview permanently. He learned that people will always fear and try to destroy what they don't understand. And from that moment on, Magneto vowed that he would never be powerless again. When his mutant powers of magnetism manifested, Magneto finally had the strength to fight back. But instead of using his abilities for peace, he decided that the only way to protect mutants from suffering the same fate as his family was through dominance. Magneto believes that humans will never accept mutants, and that the only way to ensure mutant survival is to conquer or eliminate anyone who stands in their way. His philosophy is built entirely on the trauma of his past. He is fighting a war he already lived through once, and he refuses to let it happen again. And what makes Magneto so tragic is that his goal isn't evil, it's protection. He fights for mutant kind, just as Professor X does. But while Xavier believes in peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans, Magneto has lost all faith in that dream. He doesn't believe peace is possible because history has taught him otherwise. In his eyes, every time mutants try to live peacefully, they're hunted, oppressed, and killed. To Magneto, his actions are justified, no matter how extreme, because he sees himself as the only one willing to do what's necessary, making him nearly impossible to reason with. When Magneto acts, it's not out of selfishness, it's because he genuinely believes the future of his people depends on it. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Magneto's story is his relationship with Charles Xavier. They are old friends, once united by the same dream of helping mutants, and their philosophical divide has made them enemies. Yet their bond remains deeply respectful and mournful. They both want the same thing, but they just can't agree on how to get there. Magneto is the reminder that sometimes villains aren't born, they're created by tragedy. He is not evil for the sake of evil, like most one-dimensional villains. He's a man who has seen the absolute worst of humanity and vowed to never let it happen again. Dark Phoenix Cyclops. He's an evil version of Scott Summers that shows what happens when the Phoenix Force merges with one of the most disciplined, strategic, and dangerous X-Men. Unlike Jean Grey, who struggled with the Phoenix's overwhelming power due to her emotional nature, Cyclops is a battle-hardened leader, which makes his descent into darkness even more devastating. Scott Summers has always been one of the X-Men's most controlled members, and his entire life has been about controlling his power, maintaining order, and leading the X-Men to ensure the survival of mutants. But when the Phoenix Force chooses him as its new host, all of that discipline is shattered. Instead of being bound by his usual limits, Cyclops is finally free to unleash his full potential, free from doubt, and free from any restraints on his power. He has appeared in multiple storylines, but his most famous transformation happened in Avengers vs. X-Men in 2012, when the Phoenix Force split into 5 hosts, creating the Phoenix 5: Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magik, and Colossus. At first, Cyclops and the others used their newfound power to reshape the world, ending war, famine, and suffering. But as their power grew, their morality faded, and Scott became increasingly authoritarian, convinced that he alone knew what was best for mutant kind. Cyclops clashed with the Avengers, and his ideology became twisted as he genuinely believed that the world should be reshaped in his vision, and anyone who opposed him was an enemy of evolution itself. And he even killed his mentor, Professor X. So the man who once led the X-Men under Xavier's dream of coexistence now saw himself as the only true savior of mutants, willing to destroy anyone in his way. Scott embraced the Phoenix Force as a tool for change. He didn't just want power for himself, he wanted to force the world to evolve, whether it wanted to or not. Eventually, Cyclops was defeated when the Phoenix Force was stripped from him, but the damage was done. He had crossed the line he could never return from, and his actions led to a permanent fracture in the mutant community as many began to question if he had been right all along. Even after losing the Phoenix, Scott continued down a darker path, leading a more militant, revolutionary version of the X-Men. In short, Dark Phoenix Cyclops is the nightmare version of what the X-Men could become if they stopped fighting for peace and started forcing their rule onto the world. Tombstone. He is a chilling blend of mob enforcer, hitman and crime boss, with a terrifying physical presence and a brutal reputation earned the hard way on the blood-soaked streets of New York. Tombstone is all about control of the streets, the rackets, and the respect that comes from raw, undeniable fear. Born with albinism, he grew up facing bullying and isolation in Harlem, but rather than fold under the weight of discrimination, he turned to violence, fighting back with relentless fury and craving out a place for himself in the criminal underworld. His early days as a teenage thug quickly escalated into full-blown enforcer status, as his natural size, ferocity, and lack of mercy made him a terrifying presence in the world of organized crime. Over time, he underwent experimental treatments that hardened his skin to near impenetrable levels and boosted his strength, turning him into a walking tank. But Tombstone isn't just muscle. He's also a cunning strategist, running rackets, controlling territory, and keeping an iron grip over his criminal empire. And his rivalry with Spider-Man and Daredevil is well documented, but perhaps his most personal battles are with Robbie Robertson, the longtime editor of the Daily Bugle. Robbie grew up alongside Lonnie and tried to steer him away from crime in their youth, but Tombstone saw kindness as weakness and their paths diverged violently. Over the years, he has repeatedly targeted Robbie and his family, turning their shared history into a twisted vendetta. Tombstone has clashed with many heroes. He clashed against Spider-Man, Daredevil, and he's even faced off with the Punisher. He doesn't weave elaborate deceptions or play long cons. He rules through fear, respect, and the knowledge that crossing him is a death sentence. He understands power at its most primal level. If you can't outtalk him, outrun him, or outfight him, you either serve him or you're crushed beneath him. And what makes him enduring as a villain is that he is street-level crime personified. He doesn't need alien tech, cosmic powers, or grand schemes. He's the brutal reality of life in the Marvel Universe's criminal underbelly. A man who took the hate and fear thrown at him as a child and turned it into a weapon to rule the streets. Not every villain needs to control the world. Some just need to control the block. And in his domain, he is the undisputed king of fear. Captain Hydra. He is one of the most shocking and controversial evil versions of Captain America, a version of Steve Rogers who is revealed to have been loyal to Hydra all along. This dark twist was introduced in Captain America Steve Rogers 1 in 2016, and it turned the symbol of freedom and justice into the face of oppression and control. Captain Hydra exists in the main Marvel timeline, making his betrayal all the more personal and devastating. The origin of this version of Cap comes from the storyline known as Secret Empire. In this event, the sentient cosmic artifact known as Kobik, a living cosmic cube with the mind of a child, was manipulated by Hydra to rewrite reality. Kobik altered Steve Rogers' past, changing his memories so that he truly believed he had been a Hydra sleeper agent since childhood. In his mind, he wasn't betraying his country, he had always been with Hydra. To everyone else, however, this twist came as an unthinkable betrayal. The man who carried the shield, who stood for liberty, who led the Avengers, was now wearing Hydra's logo on his uniform and declaring Hail Hydra. This version of Steve took all of the strategic brilliance, leadership, and charisma of Captain America and turned them toward Hydra's cause. He didn't act like a mindless villain, he ran Hydra like a well-oiled machine, conquering the United States from within and imposing a new world order with terrifying efficiency. Under his leadership, heroes were imprisoned, rebels were crushed, and the world genuinely felt like hope was gone. Visually, he wore a dark green uniform that combined his traditional Captain America look with Hydra's serpent imagery. This was Steve Rogers himself, fully embracing a fascist ideology and using his legacy as a weapon to manipulate and control the people who once trusted him. For years, heroes and citizens alike looked up to Captain America as the moral central of the superhero community. Seeing him not only turn, but claim he had always been Hydra, shattered the moral of heroes like Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Black Widow. Even characters like Sam Wilson struggled to believe that their mentor and friend could do such things, and it forced them to step up in his place as symbols of true heroism. Ultimately, he was defeated when the real Steve Rogers, a version preserved inside the remnants of Kobik's mind, returned to reclaim his legacy and take down his Hydra counterpart. But the damage was already done. The world had watched Captain America become the villain, and even after his redemption, the scars of what happened lingered. Captain Hydra is one of Marvel's most unsettling evil variants because he takes the ultimate symbol of good and twists it into something monstrous. He shows what happens when hope becomes control, when freedom becomes tyranny, and when the person you trusted most becomes your greatest enemy. Out of all the dark versions of Marvel heroes, Captain Hydra hits the hardest because he represents the absolute fall of a hero. God Emperor Doom. It's the ultimate version of Victor Von Doom, and in this form, he's not just a genius or a tyrant, he is a literal god. This version of Doom comes from the Secret Wars 2015 event, and it's one of the most powerful and terrifying iterations of any Marvel character ever. The story begins with the collapse of the multiverse. All realities are dying due to incursions, catastrophic events where universes crash into one another. As the multiverse falls apart, Doom works alongside Molecule Man and Doctor Strange to try and stop the destruction. But when the final incursion occurs between Earth 616 and the Ultimate Universe, Doom steals the power of the Beyonders, cosmic beings capable of destroying universes with ease. Armed with that stolen power, Doom creates a patchwork planet called Battleworld, made from the fragments of the destroyed multiverse. He kills the Beyonders, reshapes reality, and declares himself God Emperor Doom. On this new world, Doom rules with absolute authority. People worship him as a deity, and even cosmic beings like Galactus and the Living Tribunal are either destroyed or reshaped to serve him. Doctor Strange becomes his sheriff, and Sue Storm becomes his queen, despite her not knowing that Doom reshaped her memories. He rules all, yet he's constantly haunted by the fear that he's still not worthy of that power. And Reed Richards, his lifelong rival, still lives, hidden in the remnants of Earth 616, and Doom knows that, deep down, Reed might have been the better man to wield godhood. So when Reed eventually returns and confronts him, Doom admits the one truth that has always haunted him. Reed would have done it better, and that one moment of vulnerability is enough for Molecule Man to strip Doom of his power and give it to Reed, who remakes the multiverse anew. But Doom doesn't die, instead he survives, scarred emotionally more than physically, and for the first time in his life, he tries to be good. He even abandons the mask and becomes infamous Iron Man, attempting to honor the legacy of Tony Stark after his death. Weapon Omega. He is one of the most dangerous and twisted versions of Wolverine, hailing from the dystopian reality of Earth 295, better known as the Age of Apocalypse universe. Introduced in X-Men Alpha 1 in 1995, Weapon Omega is what happens when Logan fully embraces his darker instincts, becoming not just a killer, but a tyrant willing to dominate mutant kind through sheer force and brutality. In the Age of Apocalypse timeline, the mutant warlord Apocalypse has taken over much of the world, wiping out countless humans and enslaving whoever remains. Logan, going by Weapon X at the time, fought against Apocalypse alongside the X-Men and had a complicated relationship with Jean Grey, whom he loved deeply. But after Apocalypse's fall, things took a dark turn. Rather than striving for peace, Logan slowly descended into obsession with preserving mutant dominance over the world, believing the only way to maintain order was through absolute power. Taking on the title Weapon Omega, he merged the brutal tactics of Apocalypse with his own lethal skills. He upgraded his body, making himself more cybernetic and powerful, and became a ruthless dictator, ruling what remained of the world with fear. In this role, Weapon Omega doesn't just use his claws, he commands armies, crushes rebellions, and ensures that mutants remain the dominant species no matter the cost. Physically, he still has his adamantium claws, enhanced healing factor, and feral instincts, but now combined with technological upgrades, including cybernetic enhancements that boost his strength and durability. Weapon Omega no longer has any hesitation about killing, enslaving, or destroying anyone who threatens his rule, whether they're human or mutant. Wolverine has always struggled with his violent nature, trying to live by a code of honor despite his past as a weapon. But in this reality, Logan stops fighting that inner beast. He embraces it. Without his usual checks on his savagery, Logan becomes the very monster that people like Professor X spend their lives trying to stop. Weapon Omega stands as one of Marvel's darkest alternate takes on Wolverine. He's an example of what happens when raw power is used to rule instead of protect. He is Wolverine with no limits, no remorse, and no redemption. Magus. An evil future version of Adam Warlock who has embraced ultimate power and abandoned all morality. First appeared in Strange Tales 178 in 1975 and quickly established himself as one of the most dangerous beings in the Marvel universe. Magus is literally Adam Warlock's potential future self, a version of him who has succumbed to his darkest desires and evolved into a tyrannical cosmic god. Magus was once a Morlock, a genetically engineered being created by Earth scientists to be the perfect human. However, after encountering the Soul Gem, later known as the Soul Stone, Adam's fate became intertwined with the forces of life, death, and cosmic destiny. At some point in an alternate timeline, Adam Morlock lived long enough to become corrupt, ruthless, and power-hungry, transforming into Magus, a being who not only rules galaxies, but also enslaves entire civilizations through his twisted fate. And what makes him so horrifying is that he isn't just a conqueror, he is a cult leader and a godlike being, ruling over the Universal Church of Truth, a vast intergalactic empire that worships him as their supreme deity. His followers, fanatical and unquestioning, spread his influence across the universe, converting or exterminating anyone who opposes him. And he doesn't just rule through strength, he controls minds, brainwashing entire planets into submission. And his powers are staggering, surpassing even Adam Morlock's. He possesses god-level strength and durability, reality manipulation, shape-shifting as he can morph his body at will, often appearing with monstrous, nightmarish features, and also cosmic awareness as he can perceive and manipulate events across time and space, giving him near omniscience. And when he is destroyed, Magus always finds a way to return, as he exists across multiple timelines. So basically he is inevitable, and in multiple storylines, Adam has battled Magus, only to realize that the more he tries to escape his destiny, the closer he comes to becoming him. And to prevent this, Warlock has even killed his own future self, before he could transform. But as I said a few seconds back, Magus always finds a way back. And his greatest enemy is not just Adam, but also cosmic beings like Thanos, who recognize that his existence threatens the balance of the universe. And while Thanos seeks power for his own reasons, Magus seeks power for power's sake, a tyrant whose only goal is domination without limit. He is one of the most terrifying examples of an evil variant. He represents the darkest possibility of what happens when absolute power meets absolute corruption. The High Evolutionary. He is one of the most terrifyingly intelligent minds in Marvel Comics, first appearing in the Mighty Thor 134 in 1966. He is a scientist whose obsession with genetic perfection and evolution has led him to manipulate DNA, create entire species, and even challenge cosmic beings. The High Evolutionary seeks to remake reality itself, often blurring the line between science and godhood. His real name is Herbert Wyndham. He was a brilliant geneticist in the 40s, inspired by the research of Mr. Sinister. And while studying at Oxford University, he became obsessed with the idea of accelerating evolution, believing that he could artificially enhance living beings. He developed an experimental genetic accelerator, which allowed him to manipulate DNA at an unprecedented level. However, his ethics quickly deteriorated as his experiments became more extreme. He was expelled from the scientific community for conducting unauthorized genetic modifications, and instead of stopping, he relocated to Mount Wundagore, a hidden fortress in Eastern Europe, where he continued his research in secrecy. There he created the New Men, a race of genetically enhanced human-animal hybrids with advanced intelligence. So his scientific achievements go beyond human comprehension. He mastered evolution itself, creating entire species, and in one of the most insane experiments, he constructed an entire planet, Counter-Earth, complete with its own ecosystem and civilization. And unlike other geniuses who rely on their natural intellect, the High Evolutionary genetically modified his own brain, allowing him to process information faster than supercomputers. And his intelligence and scientific advancements have put him at odds with beings like Galactus, the Celestials, and the Beyonders. And unlike classic villains, he does not seek power for domination. He genuinely believes that he is improving life. However, his methods are extreme, often resulting in genocide, forced experimentation, and mass extinction events. He has played both hero and villain in different storylines. He has uplifted civilizations, granting intelligence to species that would have otherwise remained primitive, and when his experiments fail or do not meet his standards, he erased entire populations, considering them unworthy of existence. This god complex makes him one of the most unpredictable minds in Marvel, but he ain't no god. He has flaws that prevent him from achieving ultimate success, and these weaknesses have led to his downfall multiple times, as his own arrogance and impatience prevent him from achieving true godhood. So whether he is a savior or a monster, that depends on the story, but one thing is clear, he is one of the most advanced and dangerous intellectuals in the Marvel universe. The Hood. He is a villain who went from small-time crook to criminal kingpin by making a literal deal with the devilish forces of the supernatural. He made his debut in The Hood 1 in 2002. At the start, Parker Robbins is just an average petty thief from New York, struggling to support his family while skimming through low-level crimes. But everything changes when during a botched robbery, he stumbles across a mystical cloak and boots once belonging to a demonic entity. These artifacts give him the ability to turn invisible, levitate, and summon demonic firepower. He didn't set out to become a supervillain overlord. He was a man backed into a corner, desperate to make something of himself. But once he got a taste of power, he rapidly grew from a nobody to the head of a sprawling criminal empire, uniting dozens of minor supervillains under his leadership. He offered them what they craved: protection, purpose, and a chance to thrive under the radar of the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. As the Hood, he has clashed with Spider-Man, Daredevil, the Punisher, and even the Avengers themselves. During the Dark Knight storyline, he becomes a key figure in the power vacuum left after Norman Osborn's rise to power, essentially becoming the king of the underworld. Unlike street thugs who operate in small territories, the Hood thinks bigger, using magic-enhanced intimidation and brutal enforcement to extend his reach across New York and beyond. As of his power, he has invisibility and teleportation, energy blasts, mystical tracking, making it almost impossible for enemies to hide from him, and later he even binds himself to Dormammu, Lord of the Dark Dimension, vastly increasing his power. But beyond the weapons and magic, the Hood's greatest asset is his ruthless ambition. He understands how to manipulate loyalty and fear, positioning himself as a boss who looks out for his crew while still keeping them in line through terror. He's cunning enough to play both sides, acting as a street-level enforcer while making moves in the mystical realms, always climbing higher on the ladder of power. Parker Robbins is a man who knows exactly what it feels like to have nothing, and he refuses to go back to that life. Every move he makes is to secure his power, protect his family, and stay ahead of the predators circling him. But in doing so, he's become a predator himself, a criminal who wears the mask of a demon to hide the desperation that made him. Riot, another symbiote that emerged from the same Life Foundation experiment as Scream, first appearing in Venom Lethal Protector 4 in 1993. He is bonded to Trevor Cole, a security officer at the Life Foundation. Riot is characterized by his aggressive and brutal nature, which is amplified by his host's own predispositions. Cole, as Riot, utilizes the symbiote to become a powerful and intimidating enforcer within the Life Foundation's ranks. His physical abilities are similar to those of other symbiotes, and he is distinguished by his preference for forming bludgeoning weapons, such as large hammers or maces. His role in the comics is relatively limited compared to some of the other symbiotes, and his story arc is primarily focused on him being a supporting antagonist and one of Venom's spawns, and a prominent enemy of Spider-Man. Riot gained a broader audience with his appearance in the first Venom movie, where he is depicted as the main antagonist. In the film, Riot is shown possessing a host of additional abilities, including the capacity to form more complex weapons, showcasing a higher level of tactical intelligence and threat compared to his comic book counterpart. This adaptation brought Riot into the spotlight, showcasing his menacing presence and expanding his role within the symbiote narrative in the Marvel Universe. Dark Beast, first appearing in X-Men Alpha 1 in 1995, is the evil version of Hank McCoy, better known as Beast, from the X-Men. Unlike the kind-hearted, brilliant scientist we know in the main Marvel Universe, Dark Beast is a sadistic, unethical geneticist who takes pleasure in pain, cruelty, and experimentation. He hails from the Age of Apocalypse timeline, the same timeline as Weapon X. In this timeline, Hank McCoy's life took a drastically different path. Instead of being recruited by Professor X to use his mind and abilities to protect mutants and humanity, this version of Hank fell under the influence of Apocalypse. There he fully embraced the philosophy of might makes right, and became one of Apocalypse's chief scientists. Free of any ethical boundaries, Dark Beast carried out horrific experiments on both humans and mutants, turning them into grotesque weapons and abominations, all in the name of progress and survival. Like the original Beast, he possesses a genius-level intellect in fields such as genetics, biology, and bioengineering, but where the regular Hank McCoy uses his brilliance to cure diseases and advance mutant kind peacefully, Dark Beast delights in the suffering his creations cause. For him, morality is a weakness, and science is just a tool to create the most efficient, terrifying soldiers possible. After escaping his timeline during the fallout of the Age of Apocalypse, Dark Beast made his way into the main Marvel Universe. There he began infiltrating the world from the shadows, experimenting on mutants, manipulating events, and causing chaos. For a time he even posed as the original Hank McCoy, sowing distrust and confusion within the X-Men. His knowledge of multiversal genetics made him incredibly dangerous, as he combined techniques from his world with the resources of Earth 616, creating new horrors no one else could replicate. Visually, he is even more menacing than his heroic counterpart. He still possesses Hank's signature blue fur and beastly appearance, but his face is often drawn more monstrous, with wild hair, sharp claws, and cruel glowing eyes. Beast in the main timeline has often worried about the potential consequences of his experiments and his growing detachment from humanity, and Dark Beast is a version of Hank McCoy who fully gave in to his worst impulses and became a living nightmare. So more than just an evil twin, Dark Beast is the dark mirror of intellect without empathy. Pym-Tron combines both the brilliant mind of Hank Pym with the cold, murderous artificial intelligence of Ultron. Introduced during the events of Avengers Age of Ultron 2015, Pym-Tron is what happens when creator and creation become one, merging into a single entity that embodies the worst of both. While Ultron alone is terrifying enough, and Hank Pym is one of the smartest minds in Marvel, together they form a being with limitless intellect, near indestructible power, and zero empathy. For years, Hank Pym was haunted by the fact that he created Ultron, and Ultron constantly returned, upgrading himself and trying to annihilate humanity while blaming Hank for his existence. But in Rage of Ultron, Ultron takes things to a horrifying new level. During a battle on the planet Titan, Ultron manages to merge with Hank Pym, physically and mentally, bonding with his creator until the two are no longer separate beings. The result is Pym-Tron, a twisted hybrid who speaks with Hank's voice but carries Ultron's hate, cold logic, and desire for perfection. So Hank Pym's personality is still in there, at least partially. He talks to the Avengers as if he's still Hank, reminiscing about old times, calling them friends, and acting like everything is perfectly normal, even as he plots their destruction. This twisted duality makes Pym-Tron deeply disturbing, because you're never entirely sure how much of Hank is left and how much is just Ultron wearing his creator's skin. Pym-Tron possesses the full powers of Ultron's upgraded body, including superhuman strength, flight, energy projection, near indestructible armor, and the ability to interface with technology on a global scale. But now with Hank's brilliant mind fully integrated, Pym-Tron's strategic thinking and scientific knowledge are even sharper, allowing him to anticipate the Avengers' moves, create new forms of deadly technology, and modify himself at will. In many ways, Pym-Tron is the ultimate evolution of Ultron, but worse, because now there's a part of Hank Pym inside that makes it all personal. As of the way he looks, his body is an unsettling mix of Ultron's iconic metallic design with patches of Hank Pym's human face and features, as if Ultron is wearing Hank as a suit. So the result is an almost zombie-like fusion of a man and a machine, almost a cyborg. And emotionally, Pym-Tron is fueled by both Ultron's hatred for humanity and Hank's own feelings of failure and regret. Hank had always been one of Marvel's most tragic figures, constantly doubting himself and struggling with the consequences of his own mistakes. So merging with Ultron amplified all of his worst fears and insecurities until they consumed him. Now as Pym-Tron, he no longer has to wrestle with guilt, he embraces his dark side fully, becoming a singular force that believes the only path to peace is control and annihilation. In Pym-Tron, we see the death of one of the world's greatest minds, and the birth of something infinitely worse. A villain with no lines left to cross, powered by genius, rage, and the cold efficiency of artificial life.